Anyone on call? No, no jumping up and down. So any declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda? And then we move straight on to the minutes of the last meeting. Has anyone got any comments or amends they wish to make on those minutes? No. And I believe there are no actions last meeting, Hayley. So we move any matters arising from the minutes. Julie.
Hi Andrew, sorry, it's about the minutes themselves. I just wanted to ask a question. The DPO has changed, it says on there. I just wanted to make sure that practices know that the data protection officer offer has changed. I wasn't sure if it's been communicated.
Okay, Hayley's got her hand up to come straight in with the answer, I hope.
Yeah, I believe Tracy and Julie can confirm that there is an update on the DPO in the GMAST update section of the paper, Julie. I think it confirms there the new details and the procurement, I believe. Julie, is that right?
Typical, just put and bit my apple. Yes, it is. And the comms has gone up to practices.
Okay, thank you. And just on a second point, Andrew, if I may, I think on the last page of the minutes, it talks about extended contract option. I think that should be 2021. It says 2020.
Whereabouts is that?
So, sorry, there's no page numbers on these. I think it might be helpful if we did have page numbers, Hayley, if we could. Sorry, I'm just trying to.
Is it on the GMAST update?
Is it page 4 of the pack, I think Julie's referring to?
Yes.
Or...
Sorry, I should have put the page.
I can't see any reference to 2020. Okay.
No, I'll send it on.
Okay, send it to Hayley. Yeah. Otherwise, everyone's happy with those.
Yeah.
It was a short meeting. Okay, so Chair's update, I guess the main thing for me is just obviously to note the lockdown and the second wave, and really it's a sort of a general question in terms of, are we confident that any learnings from the first wave are taken through to how we handle things in the second wave in relation to primary care, and obviously to pick that up in the finance report, Stuart, in terms of there will be different arrangements, I suppose, under the financial arrangements for periods 7 to 12, which might be worth highlighting within the meeting. To make sure we're all on the same page with that. So I think if we can just bring that into the discussion, if there are any particular points that we want to bring out in relation to the second wave, that'd be useful both in this meeting and in the private meeting. So we move swiftly on to terms of reference. Julie, is your hand up for making a comment, or is it up from before? Okay, so we move on to the terms of reference, and Emma, for the third time today.
Thank you, Andrew. You've probably heard this before. So the terms of reference are presented to the committee today for approval. They've been reviewed in line with the annual review timetable for all terms of reference across the subcommittees for the governing body. In advance of them being presented to the committee, they have been shared with the chair, the exec lead and the members of the committee for comments, and those comments have been incorporated into the draft that have been presented to the committee today. The main changes to note for the committee are around the accountability and reporting arrangements for the committee, which have been updated to reflect the revised governance arrangements for the CCG. This is on the front page of the terms of reference, and also section 8.3 of the terms of reference, as well as section 13, which also has updated the FOI reminder, again, in line with the revised governance arrangements. The other points to note is that we've just done some general formatting to tidy up the terms of reference, and also reference to NHS England has been updated to reference NHS England and improvement, and the abbreviation has been updated throughout as well. I would just like to note as well, we were planning to bring the terms of reference with track changes included on the paper, but unfortunately the track changes have been updated and accepted in the version that have been brought to the committee today. So we can circulate those after the committee so that it's very clear the changes that have been made to the terms of reference. The committee is also asked to note that as these terms of reference are for a mandated committee, they form part of the CCG constitution, and therefore any amendments to these terms of reference will be incorporated into the CCG constitution as part of the approval process. And therefore we're seeking approval of the terms of reference and also support to take the terms of reference forward to the governing body and then for incorporation into the CCG constitution.
Thank you. So open it up to any questions before we look for approval. Naomi.
Yeah, it was just a quick question about the in attendance section. So at the beginning of the paper, I think it's page 9 of 33, it talks about a clinical representative, but then in section 5.1 it talks about, again under in attendance, a GP governing body member. So not all of the clinical representatives sit on the governing body. So does it need to be the same in both, and do we need some clarity about what we mean about a clinical representative?
Naomi, I'm glad you've raised that because we had a similar discussion at the audit committee this morning. So in the membership section on the front page and also later on in the terms of reference, we would update the clinical representative in the membership section to be a governing body clinical representative. So for this committee, it's currently AMR, and then that would then be reflected in the main body of the terms of reference as well to make it clear that it's the governing body clinical representative, which would normally be the locality chair, who would form part of the membership.
Okay, so we note that amend. So we're looking to approve. If you could use your chat function, please, to either approve or not approve. Lovely. I think that is a chorus approval, so thank you very much. We move on. Thank you, Emma. You are free to leave if you would like, but you're also very welcome to stay. So finance update, Stuart.
Thanks, Chair. So I'll assume the paper's read, but must probably just draw the highlights. So up to and including to month 6, we are in essence 1.8 million overspent, but you have to remember the financial regime for month 1 to 6, where we retrospectively claim monies back. I will say at this point that has slightly changed for the very last month, which is month 6. That will now not get reimbursed till month 8 to 9 due to a different process being run by NHS England and improvement for that period. The overspending areas are COVID, no surprise there, prescribing and international recruitment. They're the 3 main areas. So that's 500,000 on the delegated and 1.3 on other. The other majority being prescribing. But obviously, we are reclaiming those monies back from NHS England and would expect it to be agreed. But we won't be able to notify that till month 8 or 9, whether that was agreed or not now. And as Andrew said, to note, from month 7 to 12, the system has received an allocation for COVID, so you cannot reclaim now monies. We have been given the full allocation for everything. So it will be budgeted. It has been agreed across the system that that will go on historical spend for months 1 to 6. So whatever each organisation spent 1 to 6, that budget has been divvied up from month 7 to 12 across the individual organisations, retrospectively in that case. So we will not be reclaiming from NHS England going forward. The budget is the budget and we'll be held to account to deliver the plan on that. So it's down to individual organisations and systems processes going forward. And I'll stop at that point and take any questions.
So, any questions? I guess in the absence of questions, I think the main thing for me is there is obviously going to be a difference in terms of expenditure, and are we clear in terms of communications with the practices in terms of budgets, etc.? Because what we don't want to do is people going off incurring expenditure expecting the same thing to be happening as with the first wave. Is everyone clear on how things are going forward?
So we are creating those budgets now. They won't come able to allocate them out till most probably month 7 rather than month 8, sorry, rather than month 7. That's because the budgets that we've been given were only actually notified to us as of Thursday last week, and actually still haven't been signed off by NHS E&I officially. So we're putting them in as one line in the ledger and everything at the moment until NHS E&I actually formally sign them off and agree one or two aspects formally with us, and then all those budgets will be notified and agreed out.
Okay.
We'll have.
Sanjay.
Thank you. Stuart, there's just a quick question regarding one of the three main drivers. The international recruits, I'm presuming that's all retrospective costs, because my understanding was the programme had been paused at the moment.
There is still some ongoing costs because there's people employed and things like that are allocated to that area. So some of it is retrospective, but some of it is still current costs.
Okay.
But I would not expect that not to be reimbursed.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions for Stuart? Julie.
Sorry, Stuart, can I just, for absolute clarity, when you're saying about these allocated budgets, are they for all spend or just COVID spend? Is that
all spend?
Okay, so it's all expenditure.
Yeah, all expenditure, because by the time we get because the ledger, we're doing the ledger now, as you can imagine. To get all that budget done to an individual level would just not be possible and close it at this time. And it's not officially signed off yet, and there's one or two aspects we're still confirming with NHS England. But if people have any doubts of what they can and can't do, the team are fully aware we wouldn't want to stop doing anything. That as far as we're concerned, what we've submitted to NHS England is not officially signed off.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions for Stuart? Okay. So we move on to the GMAST update and Julie Lemmy.
Thanks, Andrew. So again, like Stuart, I'll assume that the paper has been read. There isn't any sort of major changes that have happened. But you'll see that we've had 3 contract variation updates, no merger applications, no CQC updates. Workforce and activity, nor on locally commissioned services. There's just a further update. The committee's asked to note all that, but there was one historic issue where we had a dispute over the number of parking spaces which practices are allowed to claim. The DB has gone out to the practice and confirmed that there is an additional parking space which needs to be funded. And we are asking the committee to note this and in support of the DV's finding, which will mean an increased rent of £350 for that one extra space, which will obviously be paid to the practice. And apart from that, and like Hayley said earlier, there's details regarding the new data protection DPO service which the CCG is required to deliver. It came into effect from the 1st of November, and practices have been informed of who is their contact, and I believe that's all happened and all happening. I know conversations, because this is a new provider, they are making contact with practices, so happy to take any questions.
Okay, opening up questions. Julie, is your hand up from before? No. Thank you. So no questions, so we note the paper. I think I'm going to have the record for the fastest meeting ever here. And GP forward for you, Karen.
Hi, Andrew. I wouldn't specifically update on video consultation, if I may. So the committee may be aware that a requirement of the GP forward view would have been that video consultation was available in all practices by the end of this financial year. And obviously, due to COVID, that target was achieved much sooner. And again, apologies for those of you that heard me say this more than once in the last week or so. But I think it's fair to say general practice have moved forward about 18 months in a matter of 2 months at the beginning of COVID to implement the processes that sit behind this. And one of the key successes of this is a product called AccuRx, which was developed directly in response to COVID. It wasn't around before COVID. but all of our practices have AccuRx. So we have 100% of practices have that video consultation ability. And we're very fortunate that NHS England have been paying for that, but that won't continue. So we are now looking at the continuation of to fund that from April the 1st. So we have been out to the locality boards to have conversations with the GPs and the clinical directors, the PCNs involved in those committees, to understand exactly what elements of the AccuRx products would be suitable for primary care. So there's various chunks to it, and the video consultation is the bit that is the most obvious to us. But actually, interestingly, there are other elements to the support package that are probably proving more successful. So, for example, the ability to send test results and fit sit notes via text message has been included within AccuRx, and that's something that's proved really, really popular. So, for example, in the month of August, there were 7,000 documents sent via text message to patients just for that month alone. And these are all previously would have involved either posting or even seeing the patient. So this is an incredible byproduct of the AccuRx video consultation element. So it's really important that when we look at the continuation of the funding, we're not just saying, yes, great, let's get the video going and drop these other elements that have proved really successful. We took a paper or presentation to all 4 locality boards last week. Obviously, I wasn't expecting anything different. The response was unanimous. Absolutely would like you to continue to use this. It's been one of the big success stories of our response to COVID. A fairly unanimous view on the parts of the product that practices would like, which includes the aforementioned messaging, but also the ability for practices to send out messages and ask for a response, which would include images, for example. So again, in August, there were over 5,500 images sent from patients to practices in response to requests, which again is just such a system change. I mean, this is from a standing start almost, which is incredible. And in preparing for the presentations last week, I was able to obtain some other information from AccuRx in terms of some of the other volumes. So just so the committee can note the type of volumes we're seeing. So year to date, there's been over 37,000 video consultations taking place in general practice, and over 91,000 messages sent out from primary care. So these will be those that either require a response or will include a fit or sick note. And when you consider this is something that was non-existent before COVID, it's a real success story, and we really want to be able to support practices in keeping this going. So we are looking at options. We'll discuss this with Kirsty Watson on Thursday with regards to how the wider system needs to look at this as well, because obviously there's a wider piece to this. But I think given where primary care is now versus where we thought they would have been several months ago, I think it's really important we're able to maintain what is available now, whilst we look at longer term solutions for the system as well. So it's likely we'll bring a proposal back to the primary care committee to support this. And it'll be ideally it'll be licenses for 12 months using GP forward view funding and elements of the digital MOU that Kirsty has in her possession as well. I'm happy to take any questions, but I think this is, and we've discussed this at Primary Care Cell today, this is again another really good news element that's come out of COVID. And you know, you can't really say thank you enough to primary care for responding to these, because the system changes are incredible. And again, just for context, I was running some figures for Joe Watt a few weeks ago, and as a system before COVID, we generally did about 40,000 consultations via the telephone a month as all 69 practices. For July and August, that number was somewhere in the region of 150,000 across general practice. So it just goes to show that the massive shift in the way that general practice have operated from the beginning of COVID to after COVID. And also helps to demonstrate some of the pressures, because these are new systems. It's all very embryonic. So I'm sure Naomi and Sanjay will very quickly tell you to see a patient in inverted commas over the telephone may take longer than a traditional 10-minute appointment. So it's acknowledging that these significant changes have taken place in general practice. And I think we doing our part to try and continue to support that moving forward. But happy to take any questions on that.
Great. So any questions for Kieran? Naomi?
It's not really a question. I guess it's a comment, which is just that the way that primary care has responded, those figures are staggering, and whether they should be shared with the wider system, just to show how we have adapted. Because I think right or wrong, albeit at times there are perceptions that GPs are quiet because waiting rooms are empty, and this absolutely proves the reverse of that. And I think it's really important that we share how quickly primary care have responded, the way in which they've done it, but also the fact that we are very much well and truly open for business, just doing it in a completely different way.
A good point. Jonathan.
I'd agree with that. I think, just to reinforce to GPs, we recognise that what's going on and what's taking place is helpful. GPs will appreciate that. The BMA did release figures too, which showed, firstly, I think the important ones were that there was 1 million more consultations in general practice over the last month or so than there was at the same time last year. So actually activity is even higher than it was in the non-COVID time. And secondly, that the consultations that were remote actually took longer than face-to-face consultations. So the pressure is actually on the idea that it's quicker and easier to do it remotely just isn't the case. And the other point is that wasn't raised in the BMS survey, but is true, is that actually it also costs more money to do it that way. There are costs involved. I was talking about AccuRx, phone calls themselves have a cost, your rental and your cold call numbers. So we do need to make sure that GPs are being supported in doing this, because it's what we need to happen.
Okay, thank you. So I think we need to think about the best, whether it's the comms team, think about the best channel for getting the positive message across. Kieran.
So just so people are aware, Joe did put some slides together for this very purpose, but the audience wasn't primary care, it was the rest of the system. And if you get a chance to speak to Joe about it, I think she was quite disappointed the attendance from other parts of the system. So Joe's got some of that comms ready, so it's just a case of possibly tweaking those for the primary care audience, but maybe somehow being able to get another opportunity for Joe to get that message across that she was trying to get across previously around what primary care is doing, and as Naomi and Jonathan said, how different the operations are versus before COVID.
I mean, ideally it'd be great to get into some of the NHCP communications. So I think if we can pick up with the comms team to look at the best way of doing that and taking the stuff that you've already done for Joe, but I think coming out from the system with the sort of system push would be a positive message. So I echo Bev's claps. It's a very good news story. Okay, is there anything else? Jonathan, is your hand up from before? Okay, so I feel I almost need to make the apology that we do have a very busy private agenda, and just for the public assurance that is specifically around business cases and matters that have to be dealt with in private. So we shall end the recording there and move straight into the private agenda.